afternoon, everyone. It's me, your host, Indrani, and welcome to your favorite show, Immigration Law. Today, we have Mr. Owen Harris with us from Australia. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sir, we know that Australia has a long history of immigration, and it's an essential part for a nation's growth. So what do you think about immigration and all?
Well, as you probably know, Australia is a colony, and we've been a city of migrants or country of migrants since the early 1800s. And all of our workers, everybody that's come to Australia who's not a First Nations person, is a migrant of one form or another. So, we have a population of 26.5 million people. We understand that, that's minor compared with Bangladesh's population of 173 million. Bangladesh is the eighth most populous country in the world, representing 2% of the world's population. Australia, on the other hand, is the eighth biggest country, but we have a very small dent in the world's population. So, and that is because 90% of our country is uninhabitable. We're a desert. 90% of our population live within 50 kilometres of the ocean. So what this means is that our cities tend to be on the edge of the country, and that's where everyone wants to migrate to. We are a nation of migrants, and we always have been, whether they're from the UK initially or from China. We had a lot of workers come to Australia for the gold rush. And so we are a country, a multicultural country. Unlike many other countries, our country is built and created on the backs of migrants. So migration is a significant part of our culture and our history.
In general, can you explain us about the visa categories of Australia?
Current government is trying to simplify that and trying to come up with a better strategy for how we deal with migrants. And the problem, of course, is that every time you create a visa class, there are a certain number of people who look to scam the system and take advantage of it. And so for a large part of what Australian migration is about preventing fraud in the system. For example, our partner visa cohort, there are reports that up to 50% of the applications made for partner are not genuine applications. So much of what immigration is about is not necessarily about trying to create advantage for people to come to Australia, but trying to prevent those people who are not genuine entrants coming to Australia. And that creates all sorts of problems and difficulties that complicate things. If everybody was honest and genuinely met the criteria of visas, then I'm sure that we would have many more migrants than we do today.
Exactly. So in that case, how does Australia assess and prioritize immigration from different countries, including Bangladesh?
There's no country-specific or very few country-specific visas. The visas that are tied to individual countries are really around mutually beneficial arrangements between countries in relation to its citizens aged between 18 and 35 years of age, where we have what's called working holiday visas or work and holiday visas, which enable people from both nations to come to each other's country, travel around for a bit, see the country, have a mix of work and holiday, and at some point, make up their minds whether they like the country or not. Those capabilities are really the only kinds of visas where we have country-specific information. The only other exception to that is some exceptions that have been made for Hong Kong citizens in relation to the recent banging of heads, if you like, between Australia and our friends in China. I think that's been resolved, but in the meantime, there are a small number of exceptions for Hong Kong citizens. But in general, Australia doesn't discriminate between people from different countries. We will take anybody from anywhere as long as they meet the requirements of the visa.
Is there any policies that already have changed in recent years?
The thing about migration is that the the requirements are constantly changing. Our Migration Act and migration regulation change a couple of hundred times a year for minor things. But there are constant changes to our policy to reflect changes in the way that the world is behaving. Examples of that include the fall of Afghanistan, the war in Ukraine, the need to bring in more workers post-COVID. There were a lot of concessions given to many people, including many people from Bangladesh, in relation to just the inability to come into Australia or exit Australia because of COVID. So there we have at the moment, hundreds of thousands of workers in Australia on temporary residency visas as a direct result of being granted essentially a 12-month holiday like in Australia because of COVID. Those concessions are tightening up. We expect to see all of the COVID concessions end in the next 12 months or so. But at the moment, we have I guess what you might call a bloated collection of temporary residents in Australia, simply because of the COVID creation.
Let me ask you that. What's your thoughts about this kind of situation?
Australia forever, since Captain Cook sailed here and planted a flag in Sydney Harbour, we have needed workers. We have always needed workers. It's like IT people. You can never get enough IT people. It doesn't matter how many new systems come in, how many workers we bring in. We're always going to need people that understand computing. And it's the same for Australia. We always need workers. We've never got enough workers, and especially during COVID. One of the things about Australia is that we're a mining nation. We dig holes and we dig up whatever we can find and we sell it overseas. We need people to come and work in the mines. And what that does is it takes away all the tradespeople out of the cities. It's like a big vacuum cleaner. All of the good people suck up all of the good tradespeople, and they go and work in the mines where they fly in, fly out. It's a lonely existence. And so or regional town. And what that does is it creates a vacuum, an opportunity for workers from overseas. And I stress the point, skilled workers from overseas to come to Australia. And that is an opportunity. And it's been like that since the 1800s. It's not going to change anytime soon. Irrespective of the politicians and everything that they may or may not say. The reality is that Australia needs workers. We don't have enough people, and skilled people, and we don't have enough infrastructure outside of 50 kilometres around the country to support our ongoing needs.
So in a whole, we can say that Australian government is looking for some skilled people from different countries, from overseas, from Asia, Europe. Let me think that if anyone want to go there and want to search for a job, but he or she is unemployed in her or his country. Let's talk about Bangladesh. If any Bangladeshi want to go there for a job, but he or she is still unemployed and not that much skilled, is there any kind of possibilities there that he got denied from visa application center?
All right. I think it's very important to understand that Australia is only looking for skilled workers at this time. There is a major review underway. O'Neill, who's the Minister for Immigration, there is a significant review underway. And our government is looking to completely revamp our system. But I have to say that, again, this is politicians talking, and whether how long that takes to implement and what form it's going to take, will be very interesting. And we're very behind the government doing a review, and we're looking forward to the exciting possibilities and changes that could be made to our system to make it better. But I think if I was giving the advice to your audience, it would be that we are only talking about skilled workers or family members. If you are semi-skilled or unskilled, Australia is not the place to try to come to. I think that's it purely and simply, unless they significantly change the approach. We know, for example, for visitor visas, simply trying to come on holidays from Bangladesh or the Philippines or Nepal or India at the moment, our visitor visa refusal rate is, according to immigration, the percentage hasn't changed, but on the ground, we're certainly seeing that if you don't have a house and a car and money and family to go back to in Bangladesh, your chances of getting a visitor visa just to come and say hello to us is quite low. So let alone the idea that you could come to Australia and get a visa to work because you can't find work in Bangladesh, I think is, I would say to your audience, don't contemplate that. Australia is not the place to come to if that's your perception.
Let's come to the point on Bangladesh that can you share us any kind of insights into the current trends in Bangladeshi immigrants to Australia?
Absolutely no idea. I'm sorry, because one of the difficulties is that those statistics come out much later than on the ground practice. But what I can say in general is that the numbers of visas that have been granted this year, we're talking at 195,000 in total, all right? And that includes refugees, 28,000 refugees. If you take away family, you look at the number of work visas, the numbers are really quite limited. And also, I don't think that we can really make too much out of trend analysis, because essentially the number is really not that much different from last year. And one thing that immigration doesn't do is it doesn't differentiate by country. So, it doesn't say this year I'm going to favour Nepalese over Indians or Indians over Pakistanis, or, it really comes down to, are you a skilled worker? Do you have the work requirements? Do you meet the requirements for the visa? And what I can say, though, is that in the previous 9 years or 10 years of the previous governments, the coalition government, which is a conservative government in Australia, the number of visa applicants that were granted was rather limited. There was quite a bottleneck, if you like. The new government, if this gives any hope to your audience, is that the current government seems to have woken up and really has pushed through. There were over 1 million visa applications in the queue. That's down to 500,000. I think we can take heart that even if you apply, your wait times are going to be significantly less than they were before.
So now, politically speaking, that what are the chances Australia will implement international legal instrument with regards to Bangladeshi politicians?
That's way outside my league of experience. But what I have to say is that Australia has, over time, introduced sanctions on political figures and particular terrorist organisations that it feels are not in Australia's best interests. But I have to say that's extraordinarily rare. And, I'm not familiar with anything that in our sphere in relation to Bangladesh. Our problems at the moment are far more focused on Burma, for example, the Rohingya refugees. And as I understand it, Bangladesh has taken a huge responsibility there with Cox's Bazar, with over 1 million Rohingya refugees.
Yes.
A phenomenal effort. Thank you, Bangladesh, from me personally. I think that says a lot about your country and a lot about the willingness of Bangladesh to demonstrate to the rest of the world what is and possibly achievable. And I think that's a total credit to Bangladesh. And we in Australia, while we don't give you recognition enough for that, I would like to say on behalf of the Australian public, thank you very much for your efforts in that regard.
Let's talk about once again our skilled immigration and all. You have said that Australian government is looking for some very much skilled people from different countries. But are there any specific skill sets or qualifications that are in demand, and very much demanded or prioritized?
One thing that's particularly of interest to Australia is the aged care sector. The aged care sector at the moment is growing significantly. Simply like every other country in the world, our population is aging, and there are fewer children than there used to be. And so as a result of that, we have fewer taxpayers, we have fewer younger people that can look after the elderly. And as a result of that, the aged care sector is growing exponentially. That's probably an exaggeration, but it's growing at a rapid rate. And what we are finding in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in Bangladesh or any other country, is that our elderly need to be looked after. And as a result of that, we're looking for aged care workers. There has just recently been a labour agreement announced, and what that is essentially is a deal done between industry, in this case the aged care industry, and the government immigration, saying, look, we will lower our standards, we will make it easier for workers from overseas. And this typically favours people from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, may have their English may not be as great as it could be compared with the average Australian, but that they can come here, they can do a Certificate 3 in aged care, which is a very short course. It's 6 to 12 months, and after which they'll be in huge demand, and they'll be able to obtain a work visa, which will ultimately lead to permanent residency. So that's one area of opportunity, I guess, if for your audience, if aged care is something that you're interested in. Now, personally, it's not my favorite thing. I really couldn't imagine looking after elderly people. But I'm a lawyer, so I'm not expected to have a heart. But but there's opportunities there for people if they're interested in aged care. Disability support is another major plank of Australian the welfare system. We have a lot of people that I don't like the word disabled. Disabled to me means you can't do it.
I understand.
But we call it disabled people that have issues that need help, need assistance, and there is a huge market for that, and that's just going to keep growing. We have a system called NDIS, the National Disability Support System. I don't remember what the I stands for, but basically it's a government-funded facility that will pay workers and support workers to look after people that are disadvantaged in our community. And that's a fantastic scheme, and it seems to be working well. And that's going to provide jobs for many, many people, an infinite number of people. If you're looking to Australia for opportunity, then the healthcare sector is where you need to be focused.
I have a question regarding this, that then what kind of jobs are most demanding of any kind of foreigners over there?
If we're talking in those sectors, then yes. Those are the only semi-skilled jobs that I would think are in any demand in Australia. If we're talking about skilled workers, then we have the inevitable, lack of doctors and nurses, engineers,
IT experts as well, I guess.
Yes, IT people will always, systems programmers, software developers, business analysts will always be in demand forever, simply because IT grows faster than people do.
In that case, can you discuss something of any kind of programs or initiatives that aimed at assisting refugees or asylum seekers from Bangladesh?
Okay, so this is a problem. I guess I was kind of trying to get to that point, is that the queue is 28,000 for Australia. That includes the people that have been sitting in Kakuma for 8 years, that have been sitting in Cox's Bazar for 5 years. We talk about, the Afghan, the fall of Kabul, where we had to uplift everybody overnight. Some of those people were included in the 28,000, some were not. So 28,000 is a drop in the ocean. And so from a refugee perspective, when we talk about, however many, nearly 1 million people in Cox's Bazar, we're not touching that with anything close to reality. And in fact, we haven't even got acknowledgements for applications we've lodged 2 years ago for some of our Afghani clients. So if you think that any refugee from Bangladesh is going to get attention anytime soon, I think that's a hope you don't want to give anybody. It's just not reality.
There are so many parents that they want to go to their children who's living in your country, I mean Australia. Then what are the benefits for parents?
Generally, the whole point of having family in Australia is that you can come and spend time with your grandparents and grandchildren. And I have 8 grandchildren and 5 children, and I would hate to think that I would be stuck overseas and not be able to spend time with my grandchildren. And the beauty of grandchildren is you can pick them up, you can throw them around, you can feed them full of lollies, get them all hyperactive, and then you can go home and leave the children to deal with the chaos that follows. But what most people want to do is they want to bring their usually mum, very rarely dad, but they want to bring mum to Australia so she can look after the children while they go to work and keep their careers going and get a foothold in the Australian real estate market, which, as you know, is gone crazy in the last few years. And so it really takes 2 incomes these days to raise a family in Australia. And I apologise, I don't know what it's like in Bangladesh, but if you don't have 2 parents working full time in Australia, you struggle to make ends meet. The standard of living is very high, but the cost of living is also high. So one of the key benefits of having grandma looking after the children is that you can get out, you can go to work. Grandma looks after the kids for 5 years or so. It's a little bit different than the Chinese model where you send the children to China for a few years and then you send the children back. Most of my Bangladeshi and Indian, Pakistani, Nepalese clients want grandma here. Of course, and as a funny aside, well, I think it's funny, is that it can be cold in Australia. And many of my Bangladeshi clients come out here looking after the grandkids, and they spend 1 or 2 months here, and then they go, it's really cold, I'm going home and I don't care about you. I want to go back to my food, my
comfort zone.
Yes, but also Bangladesh has the amazing food. Some of the vegetables and spices and things we can't get in Australia.
So you like Bangladeshi food as well?
I love Bangladeshi food. I love lots of
very glad to hear.
Okra and all the good things. But what you find is that there's a difference between the reality and the fantasy. The fantasy is that mum will come to Australia and she'll spend 5 years here looking after the children and everything will be good. The reality can be sometimes a little bit harsher than that. Firstly, and the most important thing is that the demand for parent visas far outweighs supply. So the first thing to understand is that unlike many other visas, there is a limit on the number of parent visas that Australia allocates each year. It's around 6,500 for contributory parent, 1,500 for others. But so out of that 190,000 total, only 8,000 are allocated for parent visas. On average, 16,000 people apply each year. All right. So for the non-mathematicians amongst you, what that means is that every year, double the number of people are joining the queue than can be allocated, which means that the wait time for people joining the queue is double whatever the person in front of you was waiting for. We are very much looking forward to what the Minister has to offer in November to fix that problem. And we hope that she has something constructive to do. But having said that, even if she can't fix it, the point of the exercise is that there are more people wanting to come to Australia to look after their grandkids than there are spots. If, on the other hand, you're a Bangladeshi living in Australia and you want to bring your parents here to live forever, let's say they're 67, they're retired, they're elderly, you want them to just come to Australia to have a better life so you can look after them, then the options are a little bit more restricted, potentially. All right. A visitor visa in Australia, the first question everybody asks is the visitor going to go back? Or are they just going to come here and then they're going to stay? rightly or wrongly, Bangladesh is considered a risky country. It's not, considered to be. It's not a European country. It's not a first world country by some measures. So if you come from Bangladesh, the first question immigration is going to ask is, are you going to go back if you're here as a temporary residency visa? Now, I know that sounds harsh and I don't like even sort of expressing it out loud, but that's the reality. The reality is that if you come from anywhere in the Indian subcontinent, the first question people are going to ask is, are you going to go back? And that goes for Asia as well, by the way. It's just basically, if you're not white and you don't come from a first world country, the assumption is that you're going to come here and you're going to stay because we're better than you are. But the point of the exercise is that you're going to have to work a lot harder to convince a case officer to let you come to Australia than someone from, say, the UK or America.
Thank you so much for that. And let's talk about some cultural diversity. Are there any strategies or initiatives in place to promote cultural diversity and integration among Bangladeshi immigrants and the broader Australian community?
I really don't think it plays that way. It's not about subculture or culture. It's about skill set. I really don't believe, there's a lot of argument in the various forums and online that there is a cultural element. And I truly don't believe that, having been a migration lawyer and a registered migration agent since 2007. In my 16 years of experience, I've never seen immigration discriminate on the basis of race or subculture or whatever. It's not really about that. It's simply about, do you meet the visa criteria? If you meet the visa criteria, immigration will grant. Now, obviously they get it wrong, and there are biases within the immigration department. We see that constantly. But it's not a cultural thing. I really honestly don't believe that.
Okay, then how does the government plan to address any challenges that concern related to immigration from Bangladesh, such as visa processing time, fraud prevention, or other issues maybe arise?
Okay, let me see if I can take the fraud prevention first. I think I've already addressed that earlier in my commentary, where I expressed that much of the delay in visa processing is around management of fraud. And there are certain countries that are more more risky than others. And those countries, as a result of that they are put under more scrutiny than others. And as a result of that, their visa application times may be longer than others. But as a general rule, the fraud is across the board. There are many people right across every sector, every race, every culture, that just want to scam the system. And Australia seems to be a bit of a sucker, in that we seem to be an easy target, and people think that they can come to Australia and we will just let them in easily. And in fact, that's not the case. Our Border Force teams, our Home Affairs teams are right across all of this, and they're very familiar with the standard scams that are in play. Every day, the 3,000 registered migration agents in Australia and the several thousand migration lawyers bang on immigration's door and scream at them from the top of our lungs, fix the visa processing times. And I think, I hope I answered that question earlier, but yes. I'll reiterate. Since the Labor government came to power, and please, I'm not political in any way. I'm just apolitical. But since the Labor government came to power, there were 1 million visa applications in the queue. They've got that queue down to 500,000, and in under a year, or close to a year. So Andrew Giles and the Minister for Home Affairs are working clearly, significantly, making significant headway. They've hired hundreds of extra staff. And so those visa processing times that we watch daily are significantly reduced, and absolute hats off to the current government for getting on top of what was a very difficult problem. However, having said that, be aware that the parent queues are simply, they're almost impossible to beat without changing the system. The other thing to be aware of is that we also have appeal rights in this country. So if you apply for a visa and you're refused, you have appeal rights to a tribunal. The tribunals in Australia currently have over 70,000 applications in the queue. They have 100 members who can manage maybe one case a day. Average appeal times in Australia are around the 3-year mark.
Thank you so much. So now we have some questions from our audience. I have received the invitation to apply last December, but my skills assessment and English test expired last November. Is there any second invitation? Can I update my EOI for the second chance, or do I need another EOI?
All right. So one of the problems, the massive problem, and you kind of, that questionnaire has had that question, person who's asked that question has unearthed something we don't really want to talk about here in Australia, and that is that a precondition to applying for certain visas is that you go to what's called a skills assessing authority. That is, if you say you are a newsreader, then you need to come to us and prove that you're a newsreader. You need to show me your Bachelor of News Reading and that you've been on TV for the last 3 years as a newsreader, and you need a letter from your TV station saying you're a newsreader. If you can't do that, then we're going to say you're not a newsreader, so go away. And unfortunately for us, our skills assessing authorities in Australia are an absolute disgrace, and that they are slow, they are sluggish, they take too long to process their skills assessing. And this is just, commentary from various people. My personal view is not that, but, the commentary is that people take too long. The skills assessing authorities are taking too long to process, and even to the point where that when they finally do get around to processing, some of those assessing authorities, their piece of paper is only worth 2 years or 3 years. By the time they get around, the candidate gets around to applying for the position, the skills assessment is expired and they've run out of time. That, unfortunately, is part of the Australian migration drama. The answer to her question is more nuanced than that, but basically he or she will have to relodge. There's simply no mechanism to complain about that.
So overall, we have discussed about so many things regarding immigration law, visa processing, procedure, visa categories. Now, would you love to tell something that finally what message you would love to convey to Bangladeshi community in Australia and those aspiring to become a part of Australian society through immigration?
Australia loves the Bangladeshi community. We're very supportive. There's nothing particularly different about the Bangladeshi community that would cause the community to feel that they were or were not a part of our society. What I would say is that if you're a skilled worker wanting to come to Australia, Australia would welcome you with open arms. If you're a parent of a Bangladeshi wanting to come and visit, there's nothing stopping you. We love Bangladesh. We love the people. We love the food. We love the culture. Just really nothing unusual or different. We're not opposed to you in any shape or form.
Of course.
What I would say is that, we're struggling to compete with the likes of the United States, Canada, Australia, United Kingdom, Germany, and would you even believe Russia? We are 7th in the world in terms of falling behind, in terms of convincing skilled migrants to come to Australia. Well, when you fall behind Russia, you have to say to yourself, we're doing something wrong. So what I would say to the Bangladeshi community is let's wait and see what the government brings us in November.
Thank you so much. And that's all for today. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So everyone, that's all for today. See you in next episode. Till then, take care of yourself and stay updated.